Closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You're growing into a beautiful young woman, Sophia," he said, his hand lingering on her shoulder longer than it should have. Sophia shifted uncomfortably, giving him a strained smile. "Thank you, Uncle Charles. I'm trying to finish my assignments." Charles leaned in closer, his hand sliding down her arm. "You work too hard. Let me help you relax." Panic surged through Sophia as she felt his hand tighten. She tried. "Welcome to the Savannah Storytellers channel, where we give you the best African talks, love stories, folklore, and more. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. We appreciate your support. Now back to the story."
This story is about a young orphan girl, Sophia, raised by her mother's younger sister, Aunt Linda, a generous woman who had taken Sophia in as her own. Aunt Linda was a well-respected trader at the local market, known for her laughter and generous spirit. The two lived together in a small but comfortable apartment, and despite the early loss of her parents, Sophia felt secure and loved. Sophia's life took an unexpected turn when Aunt Linda married Charles, a man with a charismatic personality and sharp business sense. At first, Sophia was excited about the new addition to the family. Charles was kind and courteous, and he would often bring little gifts home for her: new sandals, colorful scarves, or her favorite snacks. Aunt Linda was delighted with her new husband, and Sophia tried to be happy for her aunt. But as months passed, she noticed something unsettling about Charles's behavior toward her.
Charles's friendly gestures began to feel too close for comfort. He would linger when no one else was around, watching her in a way that made her feel vulnerable and exposed. Often, his gaze was so intense that it made her skin crawl, but Sophia convinced herself that she was reading too much into things. After all, he was her uncle now. He was family. But deep down, she couldn't shake the unease that settled over her each time he was near. One evening, Sophia was in her room studying, a pile of textbooks spread out on her bed. Aunt Linda was still at the market, taking care of some last-minute business. Charles knocked on her door softly and entered without waiting for her response. He sat on the edge of her bed, commenting on her studies, his tone oddly gentle. She smiled politely, hoping he would leave soon. But instead, he moved closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You're growing into a beautiful young woman, Sophia," he said, his hand lingering on her shoulder longer than it should have. Sophia shifted uncomfortably, giving him a strained smile. "Thank you, Uncle Charles. I'm trying to finish my assignments." Charles leaned in closer, his hand sliding down her arm. "You work too hard. Let me help you relax." Panic surged through Sophia as she felt his hand tighten. She tried to push him away, but Charles's grip only grew stronger. He ignored her protests, his voice dropping to a whisper that sent chills down her spine. That night, Charles took advantage of her, ignoring her cries for help, the pleas that echoed through her small room. She felt trapped and helpless, overwhelmed by a shame she could barely understand. Afterward, she lay curled up on her bed, feeling broken and alone, her mind reeling with disbelief. How could this have happened? How could someone she trusted as family betray her in this way? For weeks, Sophia suffered in silence, fearing that no one would believe her if she spoke up. Charles continued to act as though nothing had happened, treating her with the same disturbing kindness that had unsettled her from the start. He would brush past her in the kitchen, give her lingering looks at the dinner table, and whisper things to her when Aunt Linda wasn't looking. She felt like a prisoner in her own home. Sophia's physical state soon began to change, but she was in denial. She convinced herself that the nausea, fatigue, and sudden mood swings were all due to stress. It wasn't until her belly began to swell unmistakably that the horrifying truth sank in. She was pregnant, and Charles was the father. Sophia was terrified and devastated. How could she face her aunt with this news? She was only 16, a child herself, and now she was carrying a child born out of pain and betrayal. But she couldn't keep it hidden for long. Eventually, her aunt noticed the changes: the pale face, the morning sickness, the loose clothes Sophia tried to wear to conceal her condition. One evening, Aunt Linda confronted her. "Sophia, you need to tell me what's going on. Are you pregnant?" Sophia broke down, unable to keep the truth bottled up any longer. Through her tears, she recounted everything: how Charles had come into her room, how he had ignored her cries, and how she had been too afraid to speak out. Aunt Linda was horrified, her face paling as she listened to Sophia's story. The shock was quickly replaced by anger, a rage that Sophia had never seen before. Aunt Linda couldn't believe that the man she had trusted and loved had betrayed her so deeply, not just as a husband but as a protector for the young girl she had taken in as her own. Without a second thought, Aunt Linda confronted Charles, who tried to deny everything. But Linda wasn't having any of it. She kicked him out of the house that night, making sure the neighbors knew exactly why he was being forced to leave. The next day, Aunt Linda went to the police, filing a report against Charles. The legal system was slow and challenging, but she was determined to see justice served. Charles was eventually arrested and faced trial for his crimes. Despite his attempts to claim innocence, the weight of the evidence and the testimonies of both Sophia and Aunt Linda sealed his fate. He was sentenced to a lengthy prison term, his reputation in ruins, and his family severed from him. As Charles sat behind bars, Sophia tried to rebuild her life. The path was not easy. The trauma of what had happened lingered, casting a shadow over her every day. But she had the support of Aunt Linda, who stood by her side, helping her through the difficult days and guiding her as she began to find hope in her life again. The pregnancy was a constant reminder of what she had endured, but it also became a source of strength. Sophia made the difficult decision to keep the child, seeing her unborn baby not as a burden but as a part of her resilience. With Aunt Linda's support, she gave birth to a beautiful baby boy, a child she named Justice. Sophia's journey was far from over. She continued her education, determined to build a future for herself and her son. Though the scars of her past would always be there, she found strength in her survival, knowing that she had faced the worst and come out stronger. Her story became a cautionary tale in her Lagos neighborhood, a reminder to protect the vulnerable and to speak out against abuse. She knew that her path would be difficult, but she held her head high, determined to create a better life for herself and her son, Justice. In time, she hoped her story would inspire others, proving that even in the darkest of times, there is always the strength to rise above. If you like this story, kindly like this video and subscribe to our channel. We'd like to hear from you. Drop a comment on what you think about this story. See you next time.